Hey, the CPI is cooling down a little bit, so we'll break that down for you guys. Maybe give you some insights to how that might be impacting Bitcoin and Ethereum. We're going to get into all that good stuff for you guys today. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Jumping in with me, Evan Aldo. We're going to kill it here today.
Great to be on.
We're going to kill it. We're going to get some good insights, I think, on Bitcoin. We'll go into Ethereum for you guys. Before we get started, let's do one thing. Let's hit the like button. It does help the show. Best of all, it helps others find their way into the cryptoverse, and it's a great spot to start. Let's get into it today. Our sponsor is Consensus. We actually have a discount code for you guys to use, and you can actually get this before the price increase. You'll notice that's in about 10 hours tonight. This is coming up here in Austin, April 26th to the 28th. Lots of things happening down there. I will be in Austin, so if you're going to attend, use our code down below. We'll leave a link in the description. But best of all, just reach out to me on Twitter, @PaulBarron. Let me know you're going to be in Austin. It might very well be a spot where we could hit a meetup or something like that. Let's get into a couple of the news items here. Breaking market news. CPI, of course, year over year, actual 5% versus the forecast, which was 5.1, versus what its previous month was, which was the 6%. Let me kind of zoom up on that for you guys. So, I mean, in general, Evan, you would think this would take markets and thinking, because you kind of have to look at the contrarian position. Mm-hmm. You would think, okay, this is a good thing for the Fed.
Right.
The Fed is working and inflation is coming down. Sure. But at the same time, it could also be either a short period before we start to see a retracement or a flat on maybe, like, for instance, if the Fed just says, okay, we're affecting it enough, we think a pause is in order. Or do they think, let's go ahead and get the 25 in? Where are you thinking on that right now?
So I think regardless of whether the Fed raises 25 again or pauses, is bad news is starting to become bad news in terms of unemployment, things that are slowing the economy, which I think will at least bring traditional markets down farther. Obviously, that's what happens with history. After the Fed does pivot, typically you see the bottom for traditional markets. So I think that's where we're headed towards. I think we're going to have, a good amount of journey where unemployment continues to rise and bad news is now bad news. We're not used to that. For the past year or so, we're used to being bad news bringing the market up, which is weird. Now bad news becomes bad news, which could bring it down farther. So. Well,
with the exception of maybe the risk asset market being crypto, and if you just look at Bitcoin and ETH alone, super bad news is the banking. The banking debacle that we had. Yeah. That in itself was a stimulus for what happened in terms of flight to safety.
Bitcoin acting like gold, which so far it has. Hopefully, it can hold up and continue that, but we don't know.
A couple other points here was Charlie Biella. He hits on the overall U.S. CPI moved down to 5. Obviously, this is the 9th consecutive decline in the year-over-year rate, which is good, I think, in the sense that the Fed's been pushing the buttons, I think, in the sense of really pushing, core, or at least CPI down. Core didn't necessarily move down. But in general, when you look at this, if you look at the continued rise in terms of like shelter CPI, this is about plus 8%. Year over year. This is the highest since 1982. So there are some aspects of price stability that is increasing. And of course, real estate, cost of rentals, rent in general, that of course is already starting to play in this. Then we'll start to see the CRE scenario, the commercial real estate, really kind of take a little bit of a hit, which is what we've talked about with a few analysts as well. BlackRock, though, is setting in and saying they believe the Fed will be forced to cut rates without reaching their 2% inflation target. This is going to get interesting because timing is going to be very critical here for Bitcoin, I think. And here's why. If you look at the Fed and their positioning throughout the remainder of the year in terms of being able to get the FOMC meeting and set a time frame on whether or not this affects interest rate hikes or a decline, a reversal, which would be, I think, very significant for the market. The key here is going to be the timing of how fast that inflation is coming down. This was a pretty big jump, in essence, of seeing it all the way down to 5. So a full 1-point move over the last month. So that in itself, could we be on track for that. So I don't know if I'm necessarily agreeing with where BlackRock is going.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't get too cocky with this inflation being down because you have oil creeping back. Like you said, housing is still kind of high. There's a lot of things that, and nothing goes straight down in one line. There's a lot of things that could keep it up a little bit more and make the Fed come in and still be more hawkish. So let's not get too ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, and when you don't want to get ahead of yourself, all you have to do is listen to Warren Buffett. Let's play this clip right here.
This legalized gambling, and it's spreading in the States, and everything that's happening right now. You think that's changing the games? You think there are situations where the spread's not going to be made, and it's because somebody is doing it, they've been paid
Well, I think
off?
everybody in the country spent all their time gambling, flipping coins against each other. Somebody would win 20 times in a row, every, million times or something like that. You have 330 million people doing it. You've got 330 people that have called a coin flip correct or something. I mean, the urge to participate in something where it looks like easy money it's a human instinct which has been unleashed. It's always there. I mean, and when my dad was in Congress in the House office building, I could go to the elevator and yell "Sammy," and the guy would come up to take numbers bets, which were illegal, on the fourth floor of the House office building. It's people love the idea of getting rich quick. I don't blame them, but I've always wanted to get rich slow, and I have a lot of fun along the way. But I don't. I'm not immune from it. I've bet on football games. I made one wager at the sports book in Nevada, and I was out there with a couple of friends, and I went up and bet on Nebraska against it. And about 10 people got up behind me and said, "I'll have what he's having." It's going to make Ryan in the movie. And so they had a very unbalanced book when they got through that day, and I got 500. My 550, and I made a profit of 500. And I had somebody else cash the tickets. So it's so human, and once unleashed, you can't put it back in the bottle.
I want to pause it there because I think the key here was with where Warren's going with this is the idea that it's gambling, and I think that in any kind of investment of any type, whether you're in early stage VC, early stage angel, or you're going even into stocks, all of that has risk to a certain extent. Now, some has greater risk, but this has been done on Wall Street for decades. So for them coming out on this kind of thing, I mean, I think it's just him not understanding the dynamics of what digital assets are and where they're change.
Venture capitalism is a lot different than sports betting, sports gambling in a lot of different ways.
It's a 1 in 10 for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of, you're buying a lot of different companies, and some will go to zero, and most likely you have a 90% chance that at least one or two of them will do well. With sports betting, you don't really have those good probabilities. You know what I mean?
What are you talking about? You can go to a sports page and bet on 10 games, and you're going to win one.
Not always. I think there's better odds of
the
it.
Odds would give
for sports betting, there's a limit on how much you can make for that one bet. With venture capitalism, it could go up 1,000. You get what I'm saying?
Well, it depends on the odds on which one you win too.
Yeah.
If you win one of these crazy scenarios, we're getting into sports anyway. Here's the inflation breakdown for 2023. That's kind of just a quick breakdown right there. You've got mostly cost of goods around mostly food, really kind of zooming in. Let me kind of zoom in on that for you guys because they've got us on the split here. So a lot of food items still on the rise, including power. And this is the thing that a lot of people will argue is that the inflation number is often stacked against what the real market is because energy and food are two of the core elements that don't necessarily make up all of the CPI numbers. So that's the strategy or the challenge I think that a lot of people face. With all that being pushed in, you see Bitcoin really kind of nesting in right under 30,000 today. When you look at the chart, Evan, what are you seeing right now with Bitcoin?
So I think obviously if we go to my chart here in the 2-week, you're not going to probably have all green candles on the 2-week going forward forever. And, we're in that similar type of rally as what we saw in a lot of ways to 2019. A lot of green candles, and now you're getting a trend reversal sign right here, blue triangle. You came up higher this time, so, Your guess, it's hard to say. We could either come up to, this could be potentially the top, the 30K could reject from 30K, or we could end up at 35K. I think the highest we could get up to is potentially 40K, but I do think once you get the next red dot on the 2-week right here, you're going to see some type of a substantial pullback. I'm not saying it's going to be as bad as kind of this, but I do think at some point into middle to later this year, I do think there's a high probability of kind of a sell and may walk away thing. Middle to later this year, you come down to at least testing the 200 weekly moving average around 25, 26, or potentially retesting 20K. And you can look at the weekly too here. I want to show you very split RSIs, kind of the same thing. Now, when we were at this point last time in 2019, it was not the top. You came up higher. That would be the case to potentially come up to 40K. Keep in mind, history never repeats exactly. So, your guess is as good as mine. I do think Bitcoin dominance is going to continue higher here regardless. But when we do have that substantial pullback, alts are probably going to get hit hard, and there's going to be a much better buying opportunity for Bitcoin. I think I'm just DCAing for now, just Bitcoin.
Okay, with DCAing on Bitcoin, and you look at the scenario that's playing out right now, Bitcoin dominance, you looked at the chart there, you can kind of see some of the things. I don't know if I had the dominance chart up.
Yeah, I could.
But the point being is that dominance has still been somewhat on the climb here. Do you think that has been mostly because of the movement around what's been happening in ETH and the altcoins, or do you feel like this is getting to a near, because it's still hovering around 48. I mean, it kind of bumps there, but it's been on the daily. That was another high.
Different factors. So one, it's people are selling their altcoins in ETH and buying Bitcoin. Two, people are selling their stable coins and buying Bitcoin.
Right.
Stablecoin FUD. Also, there's some regulatory FUD that we may see towards the end of the year, so people feel like they're safer in just Bitcoin on a hardware wallet. A lot of the tourists are leaving. They're either running out of money or just becoming Bitcoin maximalists. So that's what we're saying. Also, the charts don't lie here. If you look at this monthly chart that I've been looking at for a while here, this bullish div here on the monthly called it out pretty well that we confirmed back when we were at 43%. We jumped up. Now we're breaking out of this wedge here. You do have a technical target up here around 55%. I think when you do see a substantial pullback for the whole market, this will continue to climb. But obviously, we want to know when to buy altcoins, when we could get things that could potentially come up 10x, 20x, maybe even 30x. It's going to be when Bitcoin dominance gets to these higher levels. That's going to be prime real estate for altcoins, potentially after we see a summer lull in the summer into the end of the year. That's prime real estate for altcoins, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting play out here over at least the next 60 days, because right now we still have another FOMC meeting, which will give us a little bit of an indicator. But I think still what Bitcoin and many of these markets are waiting on is to see whether or not we actually enter a recession. That's the concern. And I think, we're going to have Peter Schiff, I think, on tomorrow. His whole theory is that we're getting ready to hit the worst recession since the Depression in 1920. So that in itself, I mean, that's a gold bug, of course. You kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. But I'd love to hear his argument as to why that might be happening. But if you look at this, Bitcoin jumped $500. This again with CPI dropping, down to 5%. It had a little bit of an immediate response, but then again, we saw it dip between under 30K again. Yeah. So the question is this 30K a psychological point, or do you feel like this is an area where we may just be looking at a pause here before we see another little push up?
So if you look at the chart here, it kind of does tell you that we could come up a bit higher, because what I'm looking for in the 3-day right here, typically what I'm looking for a pullback is what we saw over here. See the momentum moves coming down as money flow is coming out. Also, we saw it here with money flow coming out. Here, it didn't work out too well. You just pumped up higher. But back here, you're looking to come down. Now, if this green dot plays out pretty well, we could come up to 31.5. I think 35, all the way up here, 34.8, 35 is a huge, huge area that could kind of mark the general end of this rally, a big jump up, and then we'll see that decline kind of like, if it does play out like this, let's just map it out. This would be a nice, you'd probably see that into the April, and then you'd see a sell in May, walk away all the way back down to like 30K at least, potentially a nice summer low where we bounce around the 25K area, which I think is a pretty good place for long-term to get in. But when we do test that 25K area in the summer, that's when I'm going to be looking to get into alts, and I'm going to be looking to get into trading potentially my Bitcoin for some alts and Ethereum. Doing it slowly, not all at once.
All right, so I think this is a good strategy if you're looking at trying to play it out on the short term, with Bitcoin. Many of you that watch our show are long-term holders. And a lot of this stuff that's happening right now is really insignificant to you because you're in this for 2, 3, 4 years out, maybe longer even if you're really looking at legacy building with digital assets. And I'd love to know that. I mean, just drop some comments down below. Give us some questions over on the side. We'll try to get to some of those. Make sure also and hit the smash the like button. It does help out, obviously, with how YouTube works. Let's get into ETH for a minute because we're going to be doing, by the way, we're going to do a 3 o'clock show that really breaks down ETH and whether or not it can hold, or if we start to see some really big pressures to where ETH could crash all of crypto, possibly right here on the Shanghai date. You got stakers saying, hey, don't let the Shanghai upgrade centralize Ethereum. A few points here that they're interesting, I thought, was this one right here. Staking is going to take another critical steps toward maturity, making it a critical time to steer the industry in the right direction toward more decentralization instead of less, which I think is good. And then right now, the threat of liquid staking monopoly, it still represents more than 40% of the total staked ETH overall. While this might seem like a large number, the total stake overall in ETH is only 15% of the supply.
Right.
So and we've shown this actually on a couple of shows here over the past week, especially on the Ethereum, is that ETH is actually one of the lesser staked assets when you look at some of the other layer ones. So kind of interesting there. When you look at Ethereum, what are you playing on the charts for that?
So the big thing on Ethereum right now is we're starting to form a pretty large double top all the way back here from August of 2022, that same area around 2000. Now we're hitting that kind of same area almost now. You're about to get, it didn't happen yet, it's not confirmed yet, but you're about to get a bearish div almost on the 3-day here. 2-day as well, it's actually going the 2-day. This one's a little bit more bearish because money flow is now coming out. You're about to get that red dot there. Now I think once we confirm that, you're probably going to see somewhat of a pullback here now. Before then, with the fork coming, all that, the ETH being released, we don't know. There could be some volatility here. The big place I'm looking for a potential short is up here at around 2000. I think potentially you could come up to this area and then reject from there. However, on more of the short-term time frames, if you do lose kind of this area, this big fib level at 1895, we played around with it last night. You do lose this area, that would be pretty bearish. But for right now, let's look at the really short time frames. They're actually right here in the 4-hour. VWAP coming up, money flow coming back. They're showing a little bit of strength here, and then some of the really low time frames, a little bit of strength. Now, the last thing I want to show you here, though, is ETH Bitcoin. This looks about as bad as possible.
Right.
On ETH Bitcoin, ETH versus Bitcoin, been bleeding pretty well since September. Just keeps bleeding its Bitcoin. Does not look good on any of these charts right here. Blood diamonds on the 3-day, money flow coming out. The weekly crossing into the red. Looks like it's got to come deeper here now. I think the place where I want to start getting into ETH or trading some of my ETH for Bitcoin is going to be at the earliest sometime in May or June if we hit the 0.05 level right here. I think worst case scenario is we could come down to 0.04 or 0.03 down here, technical target if you break down towards the end of the year. Obviously, you're going to see a pretty big significant pullback with all crypto if that does happen. But that's like prime get into ETH. Like, I may be selling a lot of my Bitcoin and converting it into ETH.
That would be the play, I think.
Yeah,
when you look at ETH's potential for the next bull run, I think a lot of people would argue that it has a little bit better position, right now. Though you could also leverage both and just say, hey, here's my 1-2 bag, and go that route. Shanghai is now only 4 hours and 39 minutes away, so put that on your timer there for your phone. I'm expecting maybe a little bit of fireworks on Twitter, but I don't anticipate we're going to see massive movements here one way or another. I think this may end up being a bit of a nothing burger, even though the question will be is over the next 7 days, what does that look like? Because there may be some scenarios of people on staking.
I mean, my gut instinct says if it's being released and it's up a good amount too, you're close to 2000, it's a psychological area. My gut instinct tells me that some people have to sell.
They got to
bring it down. You know what I mean?
Well, if you look at the data here, this is just going over to Dune Analytics. Unique deposit addresses, now over 100,000. You got 18 mil in staked assets, almost 500,000 validators there. You can see the growth right here in the total amount of staked ETH right now. The ratio still consumed. And again, not much in terms of the overall ratio on the total value of ETH versus staked and non-staked. So this is going to be an intriguing next few months because it's going to open up. This is the thing I've talked about before. It's going to open up some opportunities with Ethereum because of the staking layout and the way it works. And if we do get a slowdown on interest, then money markets aren't going to look quite as attractive. And maybe some people might say, okay, well, I can get 4 here, or I can go over and get 4.5 over at ETH in staking ETH. And maybe I'm willing to take that as a risk. Especially with a market possibly cooling up for a run. Right. So that may be a strategy that starts to see some movement. So I would pay attention to a lot of the analytics on where and how these addresses are moving, especially the amount of ETH that's going into exchanges. So something to kind of keep track of. This was something else over on the block. Ethereum rewards now worth over $2 billion. This will be liquid. It's going to be first 5 days after the upgrade. So you're looking at 1.1 million in ETH, 2 billion. Accumulated validator rewards right now will be available. Partial withdrawals, of course, we've seen the timeline on those. They'll be paid out as partial withdrawals, and they can be automatically claimed by validators who have the credential. So I don't know. This is still up in the air for me because I imagine a lot of these validators probably were in ETH well sub 1,000. So this may be like, hey, is this the time to do it, or should I wait a little bit longer?
Yeah.
It's just kind of an interesting aspect. Here's another fact. Only 44% have registered to claim these partial withdrawals. So that's a little high to me. Hypothetical scenario where all validators sign up to receive these rewards, the process would take around 5 days for the current 562. So it wouldn't happen all at once. Obviously, it's going to be a time, almost like a timed release, scenario playing into this. So few things strategy-wise, but it's all boils down to, I think, is how sentiment in the market is going to be looking at this. If you look at what Duo9 said, pretty simple. He says volatility, inbound withdrawals are coming, and there's two sides to this argument, and I'd love to get you guys' feedback always. So let us know, drop some comments and some questions on where you think ETH is going. Now, jumping away from Ethereum and going over to Solana, up 10% now, even though we've seen a bit of trouble with most of the altcoins. But Solana is seeing some movement here. What do you think?
Yeah, so Solana has seen some movement. The weakness in a lot of the altcoins right now in the chart is that they're still not above their February 18th high right here, which is at 27. Now, we could retest that high. You're getting a nice little trigger wave in Market Cipher. The last one, let's just see the last one. In terms of percentage, what that gave us from the bottom, it was kind of a jump up like that. That was a 25% jump up. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this jump has already happened. 25% would bring us up a little bit higher, potentially a little bit higher, 26 almost. But I think really a lot of these altcoins are just going to continue to bleed against Bitcoin and probably even Ethereum as well. So I just don't think it's worth the risk right now to mess with Solana, but potentially in a few months it is. I want to show you real quick the Solana Bitcoin chart because that gets really just look at this. You would have been so much better off with Bitcoin all the way from the peak of the, we're not seeing any signs of, and I think it could go even lower down to kind of these levels. Potentially, let's see what percentage that would be. Potentially down, probably not, maybe even another 60% against Bitcoin. I know people are going to hate this, but yeah.
Wow. There are a few things happening. You've got protocol announcing its integration with Solana Name Service. This is on the Brave browser. And then also, you guys know we've covered this a lot here, is the launch of the Saga, which is Solana's mobile device.
Right.
I mean, there's some benefits to that. And you get the merge with Helium's coming in. You've got Render making the flip. There's a lot of activity within the Solana ecosystem, which I think question is whether or not this is a pent-up demand for where Solana was moving, and this is what we've seen, in other words, baked into the charts, or is it something that could be indicating just a potential explosion? What are your thoughts?
Explosion for Solana?
Yeah.
Not anytime soon. I think if it does really pump up, it's probably going to be pretty short-lived. I think Bitcoin will continue to probably outperform it, at least for the next few months. That's what I think, and I think Bitcoin dominance will keep going up. I'd rather mess around. If I was to mess around with some altcoins, probably AVAX and DOT are the ones that look
interesting.
Right
Okay,
now.
All right.
Yeah.
DOT not necessarily. AVAX I've been in and out of. Helium, just as a reminder, earning rewards with mapping now, so this is coming. quite a bit of activity, as I said, that is starting to move into the space. And we've covered helium. Actually, helium here recently did a little bit of a move. It wasn't massive, but at least based on the fact that it had corrected off of a bottom. And I think I've got the chart, but I was looking at helium the other day, and I was like, okay, there's something happening here. Is it possibly not much of a move?
I got helium, yeah.
Yeah, it went down from its low, which was around $1.20, and it's hovering at about $1.53 right now. So still not too bad. But the point being is has it maybe bottomed out? Obviously, all pending on this relationship that they're building with Solana.
Yeah, this is more of a trade to be made on fundamentals if you're going to be going long on helium right now. The thing I could tell you is, like, I mean, this is just a standard, like, we came all the way back down to the dollar area.
Yep.
Standard bubble pop pattern, like complete bubble pop pattern that really not many cryptos you can see right now don't have that. What I would be looking for potentially is the next green dot. If we could come up with this VWAP here and get a potential bullish dip on the weekly with the money flow coming up, that would look pretty good. Now, that may not happen until like sometime in May or June, but when it does happen, I think that would be a good place to look to potentially get into this. Right now, it still looks, I mean, unless you know the fundamentals and you really know something I don't, it doesn't look like a good idea, but yeah, it could be a nice gamble.
Just so you guys are remembering that, you know, the tie-in to Solana with Helium and Render, there's a lot happening within that. This was a thread over on Twitter. You know, 10,000 NVIDIA GPUs equals about $155 million just for Twitter and Elon to get started in the AI arms race. So if you just think about all of the compute power that's going to be needed out there, then you flip over and you look at Render and Render's capability of decentralized compute power. A lot of that could be playing into some very interesting cycles in the upcoming race. Even though a lot of people were thinking Web3, actually AI may be the one that really contributes a lot to where decentralized compute power comes from. Last up is, we'll talk a little bit about Tether Gold, mainly just to kind of compare if you're going to try to get digital gold. This is one we've talked about here on the show before. But gold running up to $2,000 here and getting into its somewhat all-time high. What are your thoughts on gold right now?
So the thing with gold is, like, it's hitting that big. I think gold is ultimately going to outperform the S&P 500, outperform the NASDAQ for at least the next 3 to 5 years. I think it's a good hedge. Also, I think in times like this where interest rates are rising, I think it will outperform, you know, the dollar and will outperform whatever the interest rates are, you know, the 5% a year. Now, I think it's just, you don't have too much on this chart with the, you know, the Tether Gold or whatever, but it does seem like if I just wanted to go to the regular kind of, let's go to like gold SPX chart, because this is very interesting. If you look at gold SPX, this is like, not a lot of people have noticed this. Hopefully it'll load here. Come on. It's like a really cool thing I want to show you here. Oh man, not loading. But anyway, it's one of those rare, oh, here we go. It's one of those rare times where it's just like in terms of the money flow and market cipher. I want you to look right where we are right now in terms of money flow. Right here with money flow, this is before this rally in 2002, gold versus 400% over that period. And then if you go back more, because the internet connection must be a little weird, but if you go back to 1970, Peter Schiff would love this. Look at this, right? That
was the move, yeah.
10x against S&P 500. So
yeah. Well, it's setting at 23% right now since November.
Yeah.
That's a significant move for an asset that doesn't normally move in those channels, double digit.
I mean, if you can't handle the volatility of Bitcoin, Ethereum, gold, silver is the move right now, 100%. Yeah.
Interesting. Love to get your feedback, guys and ladies, on how you're playing this. You know, and what I'm talking about is the diversification of asset loads and the weighting of your portfolio. Are you still in cash? Are you looking at maybe going into securities again? Or are you playing crypto completely? Love to get your kind of feedback on how you're playing. If you're a crypto bug, are you weighting it mostly in Bitcoin, ETH, or are you looking at alts? Your feedback is always welcome. Make sure and smash the like button. It's one of the things that obviously helps the show out. We'll get into some questions here as well. I wanted to jump a few tweets here. I want to flip over away from NVIDIA. This was another one. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, I think that was it. Tokenized gold stablecoins. This was kind of showing this last thing around tokenized gold stablecoins hit combined 1 billion right now. This, of course, looking at Patch G and Tether Gold. So interesting that we're starting to see that. I'm curious just to see. And this is an ironic thing. I bought gold for somewhat the first time. I've bought it before and sold it, but bought it back in. And I'm just looking at it as more of not a hedge, but just as a diversification of portfolio. And you just take a look at, all right, these are some of the things that might work.
Yeah, I look at it as something that I'll eventually convert over to kind of, less volatile things like the S&P 500. Instead of putting into the S&P 500 in this environment, I'd rather put into gold, silver, and then try to get out of that, go more into S&P 500 in a few years.
Is there any altcoin right now, Evan, that you would say, all right, this might be good accumulation period right now?
So I don't think we're there quite yet, but AVAX is one that I like kind of how it looks on the charts, especially with the bubble pop pattern kind of. That's one I kind of like right now, but I still think there's a decent shot it may continue to bleed against Bitcoin. What I like here is why we're not.
Gosh, but it's still even if you look at my chart, it's still up 25% in the last 30 days on AVAX. So
I like the money flow crossover here. I like the little trigger wave right here. So I do think. For a DCA period over the next maybe 10 months would be potentially a good start. I wouldn't be starting though until Bitcoin dominance kind of gets over 50%. So I'm waiting, at least a month or two to start to get into the altcoins. But yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now. AVAX looks kind of good. DOT looks kind of good. Those are two that look kind of the best to me right now, and they've kind of lagged behind a lot of the other altcoins, and also not too many people are talking about them. What happens when people kind of forget about things? They usually come up when you least expect them. So
Near Protocol also up 20% right here on the 2-week, showing the chart right here. This one right here is kind of interesting because this is in and out on our CPI in terms of the sentiment triggers, which we're looking for, which is weighted volume, which usually creates an opportunity. At least for us, it identifies enough weight on sentiment to say, okay, this is a buying zone.
Okay.
If you look at these things, we've done these with Ethereum. Let me show you our chart on that before, and I break these things down on the mastermind. If you're part of the mastermind, thanks for supporting that. But we do a lot of additional videos, and it's kind of our inside club. But these were the zones where we were grabbing ETH. And this was the sell point on ETH liquidity because we looked at a potential of some liquidity that happened. And then we re-grabbed back here in early March. And then we had this zone right here, which was on the 4th of April, which gave us a little bit more of an upside run as well. All right. So anyway, we're going to do a 3 o'clock that's going to run into ETH a lot deeper for you guys. One thing before we get out of here, if you guys are not aware, Evan has a course. If you want to check his course out, we always leave a link down in below. He does a good job on live streams, breaks down Market Cypher and some additional trading tools. So
really good beginner course in Market Cypher. A lot of people have really liked it, so check it out if you guys are interested.
What do we got here? We got Ethereum. What will happen first, 2000 or 15? That's a hard run. That's too easy of a poll. Come on, Crypto Pit is getting way too laxy there.
Better let's see.
Should have been like 2000 or 1850.
Yeah, 2000 or 1850. Yeah, we almost hit 1850 last night. Big jump up from that, but we'll see what happens here.
What do you feel? Do you like 2000 right now? Are you still holding?
I think there's a good shot of getting up to 2000 based on kind of lower time frames in the ETH right now. The big point is 2014, where there's a spiral line right up here, which I could see that being kind of the rejection part. It's kind of hard to say with the ETH fork. Sometimes the technicals aren't going to be the best indicator when you have, things that are kind of hard to predict happening right now. So what I do think is I think some people that are getting their ETH, unstaked are going to sell. And I think when all is said and done, I think this is going to be more of a sell the news type thing. Yeah.
Let's go to a couple questions. You guys never cover Shiba. So many things in the work like Shibarium, also the Shiba Metaverse. Well, it's not that we don't cover it. You have to remember there are, just in the CPI alone of the data that we look at, it's hundreds of tokens. But when you look at the total number of projects, now you're in the thousands. So you can imagine the amount of data that's hitting us on an ongoing basis. But did you know Shiba is in our CPI? So
Shiba already went to the moon. It's too high of a market cap. I don't mess with it.
Just stay away.
Yeah, too late.
All right, what do we got here? Schiff has been predicting major depression for the last 50 years. Maybe finally he's right. We'll see. Why have Schiff on? We're tired of his argument. Yeah, I know. Paul,
Link,
thoughts?
Go ahead.
Oh, you like? What about
Link? I think I forgot to mention. Link is a good one. I wouldn't buy it right now, but Link I think for long term is
That's
one
a
of
good
those,
one. Yeah,
you get there's a lot of potential to get
it's
like
in
a
my
20x
it's in
of
my
that.
portfolio
Yeah.
for sure. Paul, thoughts on Aptos going back in or going back into Solana? I am considering going back into Solana, but it's just not the right time, obviously.
I'd rather
Yeah.
mess with Aptos, lower
Aptos
market
would be,
cap,
yeah.
new one. Yeah,
Well, it could be the run
Yeah.
if you're looking for that. Jen's saying, what, you can't excuse Evan telling us what we want to hear. I love it. Anyway, good stuff here. Always love to have your questions, guys. We appreciate it. And of course, if you're not in the Diamond Circle, make sure and get in. It's a really great place. It's on our Substack. That's where our emails go out. It's also where we drop additional podcasts with Kyle Wilson. We also do a lot of additional videos. I did a big analysis on Bitcoin at 30K on an additional video that never makes it over here to YouTube. That only gets delivered out to our Diamond Circle. So make sure and join. It's very easy and simple. If, of course, you want to reach me, it's out there on Twitter, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.